The moment Zoe Adebayo's eyes locked with his across the crowded courthouse lobby, something shifted in the universe. She didn't know his name. She didn't know that behind those impossibly dark eyes lay the weight of an empire built on shadows. She didn't know that in exactly 3 minutes, she would accidentally marry the most dangerous man in all of New York City. All she knew was that he was looking at her like she was the only person in the room, like he'd been waiting his entire life for her to walk through those glass doors. And when she grabbed his hand, mistaking him for her arranged groom from the app, he didn't correct her. He simply smiled. And said, "I do." This is the story of how a struggling actress from the Bronx accidentally became the wife of Kong's CEO Gene, heir to the Kong syndicate, and how a single case of mistaken identity would unravel secrets, ignite a forbidden love, and start a war that would shake two worlds to their very core. Before we dive deeper into Zoe and Seojin's story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our dramatic romance stories. Drop a comment below telling me if you believe in love at first sight, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about fate. Now, let's get into it. 3 hours earlier, Zoe Adebayo had been sitting in her cramped studio apartment in the Bronx, staring at her phone like it held the answers to all of life's problems. It didn't. What it held was a notification from Convenient Unions, the marriage arrangement app her cousin had signed her up for as a joke that somehow stopped being funny when Zoe actually matched with someone. Your appointment with groom number 4472 is confirmed for 2 p.m. at the Manhattan Civil Bureau. Please arrive 15 minutes early. Remember, this is a legally binding arrangement. Both parties have agreed to the terms. Zoe groaned, letting her head fall back against the worn fabric of her second-hand couch. She was 26 years old. She had a degree in performing arts from a school she was still paying loans on. She had exactly $847 in her bank account, $73,000 in debt thanks to her mother's gambling habits, and a career that consisted of being woman number 3 in a commercial for hemorrhoid cream. The hemorrhoid cream commercial hadn't even aired. But the marriage? The marriage was supposed to fix everything. The app promised a clean, professional arrangement. Her match, some businessman who needed a wife for visa purposes, would pay her $50,000 upfront and $5,000 monthly for 2 years. All she had to do was show up, sign papers, and occasionally appear at events as his wife. No romance. No complications. Just business. Easy money, her cousin Amara had said. You're already acting for a living. This is just another role. Except Zoe had never actually seen a photo of groom number 4472. The app was anonymous until the wedding day, something about removing superficial judgments from the equation. What if he was 80? What if he had teeth growing out of his ears? $50,000, she reminded herself. That's enough to pay off Mama's debt to those loan sharks. That's enough to keep them from showing up at your door again. She'd still had bruises from the last time they'd reminded her about the money. So Zoe had done what she always did, she'd put on her armor. Her best dress. Her grandmother's gold earrings. Her confidence, even when it was stitched together with hope and desperation. And she'd walked into that courthouse ready to marry a stranger. The Manhattan Civil Bureau was chaos that afternoon. 3 different wedding parties were scheduled for the same time slot, and the lobby looked like someone had thrown a grenade into a bridal magazine. There were flowers everywhere, crying mothers, nervous grooms in ill-fitting suits, and one very stressed receptionist who kept shouting names into the crowd. Park? Mr. and Mrs. Park? Window 7. Johnson Williams? Johnson Williams, you're up. Zoe pushed through the crowd, clutching her appointment confirmation. She was looking for a man holding a blue folder. That was the signal they'd agreed on through the app. Blue folder. Professional suit. Meeting point, the bench near the water fountain. She spotted him immediately. He was standing near the fountain, and Zoe's breath actually caught in her throat. He was tall, at least 6'2", with shoulders that suggested he'd never met a gym he didn't like. His suit wasn't just professional, it was the kind of suit that cost more than her annual rent. Perfectly tailored, midnight black, with subtle stitching that probably had a designer name she couldn't pronounce. His face was sharp, high cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and lips that looked like they rarely smiled but would be devastating when they did. And he was holding a blue folder. That's him? Zoe thought, her heart doing something completely unprofessional. That's groom number 4472. The universe clearly owed her one, because there was no way she was this lucky. She smoothed down her dress, a deep emerald green that her roommate said made her brown skin glow, and approached him with as much confidence as she could muster. "Hi," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Zoe. You're 2 o'clock." The man turned. And the moment their eyes met, something strange happened. His expression, previously distant, almost bored, shifted. Something flickered behind those dark eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or something deeper. Something that made Zoe's pulse stutter. He didn't shake her hand. Instead, he stared at her like he was seeing color for the first time. He paused, and Zoe noticed his voice was deep, accented slightly in a way that made her spine tingle. "Yes. Of course. 2 o'clock. He took her hand then, but instead of shaking it, he simply held it. His palm was warm, his grip firm but gentle. He held on for exactly 3 seconds too long. "You're not what I expected," he said quietly. Zoe raised an eyebrow. "Is that a problem?" The corner of his mouth twitched. "No. Not at all." Something about the way he said it made her feel like she'd just passed a test she didn't know she was taking. "Great," she said, pulling her hand back before she did something embarrassing. "Then let's get married." The ceremony was quick. Too quick, Zoe realized later, when she had time to think about it. The officiant barely looked at them, rushing through the vows like he was trying to catch a train. There was no romantic music, no flowers, no teary-eyed family members. Just her, this absurdly handsome stranger, and a piece of paper that would change her life forever. "Do you, Zoe Adebayo, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." "And do you?" The officiant squinted at the paper in front of him. "Kang Seo-jin, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" The man, Kang Seo-jin, apparently, looked at her. And smiled. It was a real smile, not the polished, practiced kind. It reached his eyes, softening the sharpness of his features, making him look almost boyish for a moment. "I do," he said. And just like that, Zoe Adebayo was married. They signed the papers. They received their certificate. They walked out of the courthouse together into the pale afternoon sunlight. And then Zoe's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. It was the app, Convenient Unions. "Hold on," she told Seo-jin, answering the call. "Hello? Ms. Adebayo?" A flustered voice came through. "This is Michael from Convenient Unions. We're so sorry, but there's been a terrible mix-up. Your groom, Mr. Park Jung-go, has been waiting at the wrong bureau location. He's in Brooklyn. We're trying to reschedule." Zoe's blood went cold. "What do you mean my groom is in Brooklyn?" "Mr. Park Jung-go. Your match. He's..." "Then who?" Zoe slowly turned to look at the man standing beside her. The man she had just married. The man who was watching her with an unreadable expression on his face. "Who did I just marry?" Silence on the other end of the phone. Zoe hung up. "You're not groom number 4472, she said. Seo-jin tilted his head slightly. "No. I'm not." "Then why?" Her voice rose. "Why did you let me marry you?" He considered the question for a moment, as if it deserved genuine thought. "Because," he said finally, "you looked at me like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. No one has ever looked at me like that before. That's insane." "That's..." Zoe pressed her hand to her forehead. "That's not a reason to get married. Who even are you?" Before Seo-jin could answer, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the curb. Men in suits emerged, 7 of them, all built like they'd been constructed in a laboratory designed to produce nightmares. They moved in perfect synchronization, forming a protective perimeter around CEO Jean without a word. One of them, older, with a scar running down his left cheek, approached and bowed deeply. "Young master," he said. "Your mother has called an emergency meeting. The Park family is displeased." Seojan's expression didn't change. "I'm sure they are." "Young master?" Zoe repeated, her voice climbing an octave. "Emergency meeting? Park family?" She stepped back. "Who are you?" CEO Jean looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. It was black. Heavy cardstock. Embossed gold lettering. Kang Seojan. CEO, Kang Holdings International. Heir, Kang Syndicate. Zoe stared at the card. Then she stared at him. "Kang Syndicate," she said flatly. "As in the Kang Syndicate. The family that controls half of Manhattan's underground?" "Legitimate businesses," CEO Jean corrected smoothly. "Import-export. Real estate. Entertainment ventures." He paused. "The other things are rumors. I just married the mafia. Allegedly." "Oh my God." Zoe pressed both hands to her face. "Oh my God, I just married the Korean Mafia. My mama was right. I am going to die alone and stupid." She started walking away. "Zoe." She kept walking. "Zoe." His hand caught her wrist, gentle, not demanding. Just enough to stop her. She turned, ready to unleash every curse word her grandmother had taught her, but the words died in her throat. He was looking at her again. That same look from the courthouse. Like she was important. Like she mattered. "I know this isn't what you planned," he said quietly. "It isn't what I planned either. But perhaps it could still work." "Work?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How could this possibly work?" "I need a wife," he said simply. "Not for a visa. For protection. There are people who want to control me through marriage, families who would use a wife as leverage. If I'm already married." He let the implication hang. "And what do I get out of this?" "Everything you came here for. Money. Protection. A way out of whatever trouble is chasing you." He looked at her steadily. "I saw the fear in your eyes when you walked into that courthouse. You weren't there for love. You were there because you were desperate. I can help with that." Zoe wanted to argue. She wanted to walk away, find a lawyer, annul this ridiculous mistake before it destroyed her life. But she thought about the loan sharks. The bruises. Her mother's empty apologies. She thought about $847 in hemorrhoid commercials and a future that looked like a dead end. "What are your terms?" she heard herself ask. Seojan's smile returned, small, but real. 1 year, he said. "Stay married to me for 1 year. Play the role of my wife in public. In return, I'll pay off all your debts, cover your living expenses, and when the year ends, you'll walk away with $5 million and a clean start." $5 million. Zoe's brain short-circuited. "And the catch? You move into my residence. You attend events as my wife. And..." He paused. "You cannot fall in love with me." She almost laughed. "That won't be a problem." Something flickered in his eyes, amusement, maybe. Or challenge. "We'll see," he said. The Kang residence wasn't a house. It was a statement. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of Kang Tower in Manhattan, a gleaming monument to obscene wealth that Zoe had passed 1,000 times without ever imagining she'd walk through its doors. The elevator opened directly into a living room that could have fit her entire apartment building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was sleek, modern, and probably worth more than she'd earn in a lifetime. And standing in the middle of it, looking at Zoe like she was a piece of gum stuck to her designer shoe, was a woman who could only be Seojin's mother. Mrs. Kang Soo-min was beautiful in the way that expensive things were beautiful, polished, preserved, and utterly cold. She was in her early 50s but looked a decade younger, her silver-streaked hair swept into an elegant updo. She did not offer her hand. "So," Mrs. Kang said, her English crisp and precise. "This is the girl you chose to embarrass our family with." "Mother," Seojin started. "Ain't nobody." Mrs. Kang's eyes swept over Zoe with surgical precision. "An actress who has never been in anything of note. No family connections. No wealth. No pedigree." Her lip curled slightly. "And black, no less. Do you know what the Park family is saying? Do you know what you've done to the merger?" Zoe felt each word like a slap. But she'd grown up in the Bronx. She'd been told she wasn't good enough by people far meaner than this woman. She'd been hungry, desperate, and afraid more times than she could count. She had not survived all of that to be dismissed by a rich woman with a Louis Vuitton attitude. "With respect, Mrs. Kang," Zoe said, keeping her voice steady, "your son chose to marry me. He had every opportunity to walk away, and he didn't. So maybe the question isn't what's wrong with me, maybe it's what's so wrong with your family that he'd rather marry a stranger than follow your plans." The room went silent. Mrs. Kang's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in her composure. Behind Zoe, she heard Seojin make a sound that might have been a laugh. "She's right, Mother," he said, stepping forward to stand beside Zoe. "I made this choice. The Park merger was never going to happen on their terms. They wanted control of the syndicate, not an alliance. Yuna Park was never going to be my wife. Yuna Park is from one of the most powerful families in Korea." Mrs. Kang's composure finally shattered. "She is elegant, educated, appropriate. And she reports everything to her father," Seojin cut in coldly. "Did you think I didn't know? Every dinner, every meeting, every conversation, she's been feeding them information for months. They weren't looking for a daughter-in-law. They were looking for a spy." Mrs. Kang's face paled. "The Kang syndicate's next heir will not be controlled by anyone," Seojin continued. "Least of all the Parks. This marriage," he gestured to Zoe, "is my solution. Zoe has no connections to our world, no loyalty to any family. She's exactly what I need." "A pawn," Mrs. Kang spat. "That's all she is to you." Seojin's jaw tightened. "A partner. For now, at least." He looked at Zoe, and for a moment, something softer flickered in his eyes. "Come," he said. "I'll show you to your room." Her room was bigger than her entire apartment. Zoe stood in the doorway, trying to process the king-sized bed, the walk-in closet, the private bathroom with a bathtub she could swim in. "This is mine. For the duration of our arrangement," Seojin confirmed. "My room is across the hall. We will not share. I want you to feel safe here." Zoe turned to look at him. "Why are you being so decent about this?" He considered the question. "Because I understand desperation. I understand doing whatever it takes to survive." He paused. "You grabbed my hand in that courthouse like it was the only thing keeping you from drowning. That kind of courage deserves respect, not cruelty." Something in Zoe's chest tightened. "The money," she said, changing the subject before she did something stupid like feel something. "You mentioned paying off my debts. My assistant will have a check ready tomorrow. The loan sharks your mother owes, they work for a man named Vincent Cho. He's connected to certain families. I'll handle it personally." "Handle it how?" Seojin's expression didn't change. "You don't need to worry about that. Just know that they won't bother you again." It should have frightened her, the implication behind his words. But all Zoe felt was relief. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't thank me yet." He moved toward the door. "Tomorrow, you meet my grandfather. He's the real power in this family. If he approves of you, my mother won't be able to touch you. If he doesn't, let me guess. I'll be out on the street by sunrise? Something like that. He paused at the door, looking back at her. Get some rest, Zoe. Tomorrow is going to be complicated. Okay, friends, we're at the halfway point, and things are really starting to heat up. If you're loving this story, show some love by hitting that like button and sharing this video with your fellow romance fans. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens when Zoe meets the grandfather. Things are about to get very interesting. Now let's continue. The Kang family estate in Westchester was old money made manifest. Unlike the sleek modernity of the Manhattan penthouse, the estate was classic, sprawling grounds, ancient oak trees, a mansion that looked like it had been transported directly from old Korea and reconstructed brick by brick on American soil. Zoe had never felt more out of place in her life. She was wearing clothes Seojin's assistant had sent to her room that morning, a designer dress in soft cream, heels she could barely walk in, jewelry that probably cost more than her car. She looked like a wealthy socialite. She felt like a fraud. Relax, Seojin murmured as they walked up the stone steps together. My grandfather values honesty above everything else. Just be yourself. Myself is a broke actress from the Bronx who accidentally married her way into the mafia. Allegedly. Do you people ever get tired of saying that? The hint of a smile played at Seojin's lips. It's legally necessary. They were met at the door by more suited men. The Kang family apparently had an endless supply, and led through hallways decorated with Korean art and calligraphy that Zoe wished she had time to properly appreciate. Finally, they reached a set of ornate wooden doors. Wait here, Seojin said. I'll go in first. He disappeared through the doors, leaving Zoe alone in the hallway with two guards who looked like they could kill her with their pinkies. She practiced her breathing. In. Out. Don't panic. Don't panic. Don't. The doors opened. He'll see you now, Seojin said. Alone. Alone? It's his condition. Not mine. Zoe swallowed hard and walked into the room. The study was warm, filled with books and the smell of sandalwood incense. Sitting in a leather chair by the fireplace was an elderly man with silver hair and eyes that held the wisdom and danger of nearly 9 decades of life. Kang Jae-ho, patriarch of the Kang Syndicate, founder of an empire that stretched across continents. And he was looking at Zoe like she was the most interesting thing he'd seen in years. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. His English was accented but clear. I want to see you properly. Zoe sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. He studied her, and she, refusing to be intimidated, studied him right back. Finally, the old man laughed. My grandson said you were brave. I see he wasn't lying. He leaned forward, his eyes sharp despite his age. Tell me, Zoe Adebayo. Why should I accept you into my family? You shouldn't, Zoe said before she could stop herself. His eyebrows rose. Oh. I'm not from your world. I don't have money, connections, or power. Your daughter-in-law thinks I'm trash, and honestly, I'm inclined to agree with her. She took a breath. But I'm also not a liar. I'm not a spy. And I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not just to impress you. So if you want a perfect daughter-in-law who'll smile and nod and stab you in the back when you're not looking, I'm not your girl. But if you want someone who'll be honest with you, who'll protect what's hers, and who doesn't scare easily. She shrugged. Here I am. Silence. Then, slowly, Kang Jae-ho smiled. You remind me of my wife, he said quietly. She was a market seller when I met her. No family, no money. Everyone told me I was a fool to marry her. His eyes went distant with memory. She was the wisest decision I ever made. She built this family right alongside me. The strength of her heart was worth more than any dowry. He reached beside his chair and produced a wooden box, aged and worn. This belonged to her. He opened it, revealing a necklace unlike anything Zoe had ever seen. A pendant of jade and gold, intricate and clearly ancient, glowing softly in the firelight. This necklace has been in our family for 5 generations, Jae-ho continued. It goes to the true wife of the heir. Not the political match. Not the convenient choice. The true one. He held it out to her. I'm giving it to you. Zoe's hands trembled as she took it. Sir, I can't accept this. Seo-jin and we're not, this isn't real? The old man's eyes twinkled. Perhaps not yet. But I've watched my grandson for 30 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you when he walked through those doors. He leaned back in his chair. Something brought you together, Zoe Adebayo. Fate, accident, divine intervention, I don't know what. But I've learned not to question such things. He gestured toward the door. Go. Tell my grandson that you have my blessing. And tell my daughter-in-law. His smile turned sharp. That she can take her objections and choke on them. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in survival. Zoe learned to navigate the Kong world with Seo-jin by her side, charity galas, business dinners, society events where she was examined and judged by people who had never worked a day in their lives. She learned which forks to use, which families to smile at, which topics were safe and which would start wars. And slowly, carefully, she learned about Kong Seo-jin himself. He was not what she expected. Behind the cold CEO exterior was a man who read poetry in Korean before bed. Who made sure her favorite foods appeared at breakfast without her ever asking. Who noticed when she was overwhelmed and always found a way to give her space without making her feel abandoned. He never touched her without permission. Never made demands. Never made her feel like the transaction they'd agreed upon. And that, somehow, made everything more complicated. Because Zoe was starting to feel things she had no business feeling. The confrontation came 2 months into their arrangement. Zoe was at a gallery opening, one of many events designed to introduce her to society as the new Mrs. Kong, when she felt a hand close around her arm. So you're the one. Zoe turned to face a woman so beautiful it almost hurt to look at her. Long black hair, porcelain skin, features that belonged on magazine covers. Yuna Park. Seo-jin's former fiancé. The gold digger who stole my position, Yuna continued, her smile razor-sharp. I have to admit, I'm impressed. Most whores at least try to be subtle. Zoe's spine stiffened. I'm sorry, do I know you? You know exactly who I am. Yuna stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. And I want you to know something. Seo-jin is mine. He was always supposed to be mine. This little game you're playing? It ends now. It's not a game. We're married. Legally, perhaps. But marriages can be annulled. Accidents can happen. People can. Yuna tilted her head, her smile widening. Disappear. The threat hung in the air between them. Is that a threat? Zoe asked, keeping her voice steady even as her heart raced. It's a promise. Yuna patted her cheek condescendingly. Enjoy your borrowed time, little actress. It won't last. She walked away, leaving Zoe standing alone among paintings worth millions, feeling like she'd just had a target painted on her back. She told Seo-jin that night. They were in the penthouse, sitting on opposite ends of the living room's enormous couch, a distance that had become both comfortable and unbearable. Yuna threatened you? Seo-jin's voice was calm, but his eyes were not. Implied it, anyway. Said accidents can happen. That people can disappear. Seo-jin was silent for a moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. The Park family is more dangerous than I led you to believe, he said finally. They're not just a powerful family. They run operations in Korea and the US, illegal gambling, money laundering, Things that make my family's alleged activities look like jaywalking. He turned to face her. I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't really cut it when there's a target on my head. I know. He moved closer, stopping a few feet away. I won't let them hurt you, Zoe. I promise you that. Why? The question burst out of her before she could stop it. Why do you care so much? I'm just a contract. A convenient solution. Something shifted in Seojin's expression. You were never just convenient, he said quietly. That day in the courthouse, when you grabbed my hand. He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. I told you that you looked at me like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. That wasn't a lie. In my entire life, no one has ever looked at me like that. Like I was just a man. Not an heir. Not a name. Not a weapon to be wielded or an asset to be acquired. He took another step closer. You saw me. Just me. And I. He exhaled slowly. I fell for you in that moment, Zoe. Before I even knew your name. Zoe's breath caught. Seojin. You don't have to say anything. I know the terms of our agreement. I know you're not here for romance. He stepped back, putting distance between them again. But I want you to know the truth. Whatever happens, whatever you decide when this year is over. I want you to know that you were never just a contract to me. He walked toward his bedroom, leaving her alone with words that changed everything. The call came at 3 a.m. Zoe's phone blasted her from sleep, and she answered with fumbling fingers to hear a voice she hadn't heard in months. Zoe. Baby. It's Mama. Ice flooded her veins. Mama? What's wrong? I'm in trouble, baby. I did something stupid. I know you paid off my debt, but I went to a new place. A new game. I thought I could win it back, all of it, but how much? Zoe was already out of bed, searching for clothes. How much do you owe? 100 million. The number didn't compute. It couldn't be real. That's impossible. It was a high-stakes game. Private. These people, they're not like the others. They're connected to some Korean family, the Parks or something. Zoe's blood went cold. Mama. Where are you? They have me at some warehouse. They said they know who you're married to. They said if you don't come alone with the money by morning, they'll. A male voice in the background cut off the call. Zoe stood in the darkness of her room, phone clutched in her hand, her world crumbling around her. The Parks. They'd found a way to get to her. Through her mother. She should tell Seojin. She should let him handle this with his resources, his men, his power. But the message had been clear. Come alone. Or your mother dies. Zoe grabbed her coat and slipped out of the penthouse. The warehouse was in Brooklyn, in an industrial district that smelled like rust and old water. Zoe had taken a cab, paid in cash, and walked the last few blocks alone. She found her mother tied to a chair, mascara running down her face, surrounded by men who looked like they enjoyed their work. And standing in the center of it all, smiling like she'd won the lottery, was Una Park. You actually came, Una said, sounding genuinely surprised. I thought I'd have to send pieces of your mother to convince you. Let her go, Zoe said, her voice steadier than she felt. This is between us. Is it? Because I think it's between families. My family, the Kangs, and unfortunately. Una glanced at Zoe's mother with disgust. Your family, such as it is. What do you want? Divorce Seojin. Walk away. Disappear from his life forever. Una's smile sharpened. Do that, and I'll forgive your mother's debt. I'll even let you both live. Refuse, and... She nodded to one of her men, who pressed a blade against Zoe's mother's throat. Una. A voice echoed through the warehouse. calm, controlled, and dangerous. They all turned to see Kang Seo-jin walking through the main entrance, flanked by a dozen of his own men. His expression was ice, his eyes fixed on Yuna with deadly intent. "Let them go," he said. "Now." Yuna's composure flickered. "You weren't supposed to be here." "I have people everywhere, Yuna. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when my wife left in the middle of the night?" He stopped a few feet away. "This ends now. Release them, and I might let you walk out of here." "You don't give orders to me, Seo-jin." The Park family. The Park family is currently being investigated by the FBI, Seo-jin cut in coldly. "Your father's illegal gambling operations, your brother's money laundering schemes, all of it. By morning, the Park empire will be in ruins." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Did you really think you could threaten what's mine and face no consequences?" For the first time, fear flickered across Yuna's face. "My men have this warehouse surrounded," Seo-jin continued. "Your people are outnumbered. And I have documented evidence of your involvement in illegal gambling operations that will send you to prison for decades." He tilted his head. "So, do we do this the easy way, or the hard way?" A long moment passed. Then Yuna nodded to her men, and they released Zoe's mother. Zoe ran to her, pulling her into her arms, checking for injuries. "This isn't over," Yuna hissed at Seo-jin as she backed toward the exit. "Yes. It is." He didn't even look at her. His eyes were on Zoe, soft now, filled with something that looked terrifyingly like love. "It was over the moment you threatened my wife." The drive home was silent. Zoe's mother had been taken to a Kangwon medical facility to be checked and treated. She'd be staying there for a while. Seo-jin had already arranged for rehabilitation, security, and whatever else she needed. "You didn't have to do all that," Zoe said finally, staring out the window at the city lights. "She's my problem. My burden." "She's your mother," Seo-jin replied simply. "Which makes her my family now too." Zoe turned to look at him. "Why did you come? How did you even know?" "I told you. I have people everywhere." He paused. "And I have alerts on your phone. Your car. Your location. That's incredibly creepy. It saved your life." She couldn't argue with that. They sat in silence for another moment. Then Seo-jin spoke again. "I meant what I said. At the warehouse. You're mine to protect now. Not because of a contract. Not because of a signature on a piece of paper." He looked at her, and his guard was down in a way she'd never seen before. "You're mine because I choose you. Because when I imagine the future, you're in it. Every version. Every scenario." Zoe felt tears prick at her eyes. "Seo-jin. You don't have to say it back. You don't have to feel it back. But I needed you to know." He reached over and took her hand, gentle and warm. "Whatever happens next, whatever you decide. I love you, Zoe. I fell for you at first sight, and I've been falling ever since." The tears spilled over now, running down her cheeks. "I was supposed to be the one who didn't fall," she whispered. "That was literally the rule. Don't fall in love." His lips quirked. Rules were made to be broken. "Are you seriously quoting clichés at me right now? Is it working?" She laughed, a wet, choked sound that was half sob. "Yeah," she admitted. "It kind of is." She leaned across the car and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, neither of them quite believing this was real. But then his hand came up to cup her face, and she melted into him, and the kiss became something else entirely. Something that felt like coming home. The next 6 months were not easy. The Park family imploded spectacularly, with arrests and investigations making national news. Yuna was indicted on multiple charges and disappeared into the legal system, unlikely to emerge for a very long time. Mrs. Kang remained cold, but the grandfather's public endorsement of Zoe, including a society announcement that she now wore the family heirloom, silenced most of her objections. Slowly, grudgingly, even she began to thaw. Zoe's mother completed rehabilitation and emerged genuinely different, humbled, apologetic, and determined to rebuild her relationship with her daughter. And Zoe herself? Zoe became someone new. Not just the actress, not just the struggling artist, not just the accidental wife. She became Zoe Kong, a woman who had survived impossible odds, who had found love in the most unlikely place, who had proven herself worthy of everything she'd once been denied. She started an organization for struggling artists, funded by Kong Holdings. She executive produced a film about black women in spaces where they were told they didn't belong. She stood beside CEO Jean at charity events and business meetings, not as an accessory, but as an equal partner. And when their one-year anniversary approached, the day the contract was supposed to end, CEO Jean didn't offer her an exit. He offered her a ring. A real one, this time. "I know this started as an accident," he said, down on one knee in the penthouse where it had all begun. "I know neither of us planned for this. But somewhere along the way, you became my home, Zoe. My partner. My everything." He opened the box, revealing a ring that matched the heirloom necklace, jade and gold, clearly custom-made. "I don't want a contract anymore. I want forever. Will you marry me? For real, this time?" Zoe looked at him, this man who had seen her at her most desperate, her most vulnerable, her most broken. This man who had chosen her when he had every reason to walk away. This man who had fallen for her at first sight and had been proving himself worthy ever since. "Yes," she said. And this time, when they exchanged vows, there was no courthouse confusion. No strangers or accidents or miscommunications. Just two people who had found each other against all odds, choosing to keep choosing each other. Forever. "Mommy. Mommy, look." Zoe turned from the garden to see her daughter running toward her, a butterfly perched delicately on her finger. Hannah was 5 years old, with her father's sharp cheekbones and her mother's warm brown skin, a perfect blend of both worlds. "It's beautiful, baby," Zoe said, kneeling to admire the butterfly. "But we have to be gentle, okay? Butterflies are fragile. Like Grandma Suman's feelings?" Zoe choked on a laugh. Across the garden, she heard CEO Jean nearly spit out his coffee. "Who taught you that?" she asked. "Grandpa Jeho." Of course. The old man was 94 now, still sharp as a blade, still delighting in tormenting his daughter-in-law whenever possible. The butterfly fluttered away, and Hannah ran off to find her grandmother, who, despite everything, had become genuinely attached to her granddaughter. People could change. Sometimes. CEO Jean came to stand beside her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Happy?" he asked. Zoe leaned into him, looking at this life she'd never imagined, the family she'd gained, the love she'd found, the peace she'd earned. "Yeah," she said. "I really am." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I told you not to fall in love with me. And I told you that wouldn't be a problem. We were both wrong. Were we?" She looked up at him, smiling. "I think maybe we were exactly right. Just, in a different way than we planned." He laughed, a real laugh, the kind that still made her heart flutter even after 6 years. "Okay," he conceded. Maybe fate knew what it was doing after all. The sun set over the Kong estate, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. And somewhere in the Bronx, a struggling actress had become a queen. Not because of who she married, but because of who she always was. And that, my loves, is the end of Zoe and Seojin's story. If you made it this far, please hit that like button and leave a comment telling me what your favorite part was. Did you love Zoe's strength? Seojin's devotion? The grandfather's savage energy? Let me know. If you want more stories like this, Afro-Korean romance, mafia drama, strong female leads, and all the love you can handle, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. I post new stories every week, and I don't want you to miss a single one. Thank you so much for watching, for supporting, and for being part of this community. I love you guys. And until next time, stay romantic.